What's up, guys? My name is Chelsea, and the past couple weeks, we've dug into pain, suffering, loss, and why God allows it. If God is so good, why do bad things happen? We've been looking at the story of Job, where God allows this great guy to suffer and wrestle with making sense of it all. It's an amazing story. If you haven't read this book before, or maybe it's been a while, this week I challenge you to go back and read it all. I know that you will learn and relate to things that he was feeling, and I know you'll even struggle with how some of it went down. We're going to look at the parts of the story today that do all of those things for me. So buckle up, get comfortable wherever you're sitting right now, because this might not be so comfortable, but lean in anyway. Now, if you've missed a week and are just catching up, don't worry. I want to start back at the beginning of the story of Job, do a recap that's going to set us up for the questions that we're going to be asking today. So let's go right to Job, chapter 1, verse 1. You can pull it up on your phones, your computers. You can do it the old school way and bring your Bible. Normally I do it on my phone, but today I actually have the book with me today. So why don't you go ahead and read with me Job 1, verse 1. There was once a man named Job who lived in the land of Uz. He was blameless, a man of complete integrity. He feared God and stayed away from evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 teams of oxen, and 500 female donkeys. He also had many servants. He was, in fact, the richest person in the entire area. Skip over to verse 6. One day, the members of the heavenly court came to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser, Satan, came with them. "Where have you come from?" the Lord asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, "I've been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on." Then the Lord asked Satan, "Have you noticed my servant Job? He is the finest man in all of the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil." Satan replied to the Lord, "Yes, but Job has good reason to fear God. You have always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property. You have made him prosper in everything he does. Look how rich he is. But reach out and take away everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." "All right, you may test him," the Lord said to Satan. "Do whatever you want with everything he possesses, but don't harm him physically." So Satan left the Lord's presence. So then, all in the same day, Job lost everything he had and loved. His family, employees, his animals were all killed. His crops burned, his properties ruined, everything. Just like that. Gone. So now let's skip to chapter 2, verse 1, and let's see what happens next in the story. One day, the members of the heavenly courts came again to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser Satan came with them. "Where have you come from?" the Lord asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, "I've been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on." Then the Lord asked Satan, "Have you noticed my servant Job? He is the finest man in all of the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil. He has maintained his integrity, even though you urged me to harm him without cause." Satan replied to the Lord, "Skin for skin. A man will give up everything he has to save his life, but reach out and take away his health, and he will surely curse you to your face." "All right, do with him as you please," the Lord said to Satan, "but spare his life." So Satan left the Lord's presence and struck Job with terrible boils from head to foot. Job scraped his skin with a piece of broken pottery as he sat among the ashes. So soak that in for a second. Who's the one that chose Job as the target? God allowed Satan to have his way with him, to test him to the fullest extent. We've watched Job have everything that he could ever want: a big family, money, land, animals, anything he could ever want, he could get. On top of that, he had a strong relationship with God and was really an amazing guy. Job's life was as close to perfect as it could get, until God allowed Satan to take everything. And I mean everything. On top of losing all of his material things like money and land, employees, animals, and his home, all of his family died, And he was so sick and in so much pain physically that cutting the boils off of his skin was actually helping. He went from having everything to nothing. And now he's in the middle of the most immense suffering imaginable, mentally, emotionally, physically, even spiritually, I'm sure. I bet in the middle of all of that, it felt like the most painful dagger to the heart. On top of that, a stab in the back from God, from life, you name it. Can you imagine what this must have felt like? He was in terrible pain and suffering, and he lived a good life serving God. And this is what he got. See, when we encounter difficulties that seem too hard to handle, when we feel the pain from the stabs of life that it brings, we naturally look for explanations, and Job did too. God literally said that he was the finest man on all the earth. So what happened to make all of this happen? So I want to look at Job 7 and see what he said there. So go back, get your Bible again, flip a couple pages, and look at Job chapter 7, verse 20 and 21. While you turn there, I want you to put yourself in his shoes. Make this personal for you. Right now, think about a time where you've been hurt. Maybe you lost somebody you loved. Maybe something terrible happened to you outside of your control. Maybe somebody hurt you more than you ever thought they could. Whatever it is for you, remember that moment, or imagine what it would feel like to be Job in this season. So let's read chapter 7, verse 20 and 21. He's talking to God, all right? He's laying his heart out. He's at his wit's end, and this is what he said in the middle of his pain and anguish. If I have sinned, what have I done to you, O watcher of all humanity? Why make me your target? Am I a burden to you? Why not just forgive my sin and take away my guilt? For soon I will lie down in the dust and die. You will look for me and I will be gone. What Job is saying is, why me, God? What did I do to deserve this? Where are you? Why aren't you forgiving me? How could you let this happen? Are you even there? Do you even care? Have you ever felt like Job did, asking any of those questions? Have you ever felt the pain of the sting and loss and heartache like he might have been going through? I have. In 2016, I literally thought that I was the New Age Job because I had everything that I ever wanted until it all got taken away from me. I was married to the man of my dreams, a stepmom to a beautiful little girl. We had a good relationship with our families. We had enough money to get by. Life was amazing. I had everything I ever wanted. Until my family caught him lying and those relationships blew up. And I felt like I had to pick between my family and my husband. 6 months after we were married, children and youth randomly showed up and took our little girl because somebody made an accusation about Adam. 2 months after that, they charged him criminally for those actions. So he lost his job. We were broke and fighting in court all the time. I was depressed, anxious, miserable. I had no friends anymore, no family, no money, even though I was working 2 jobs, doing everything I could to help us survive. And Adam's mental illness just kept getting worse and worse and worse. For a year and a half, that was our lives. Constantly fighting. Each other, the world, the courts, everything. We were fighting to just survive the living hell that we found ourselves in. That was until March 1st of 2016. When Adam stopped fighting and my battle just got worse. I did everything I possibly could to stop him, verbally, physically, everything. But he put the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger anyway, and my whole life as I knew it shattered, along with my thumb because the bullet that came out of his face tore through me too. Everything that ever meant something to me was gone, and my body was shutting down because I had been shot. I felt a lot like Job. And just like Job, in the middle of my pain, I looked for a reason. We all do when something bad happens, right? We try to figure out why. We make up a theory that could possibly explain away the pain. We think, maybe God is just punishing me for those mistakes that I've made. Or maybe God doesn't care about me at all. Maybe he's forsaken me, or I'm cursed. Or maybe I didn't have enough faith, and maybe that's why he didn't come through. Or maybe, you know what? Maybe there's just no God at all, because how could a loving and faithful God ever allow this to happen? Have you ever thought any of that? I have. And I couldn't find an answer to my feelings or circumstances. When I was in the middle of one of those miserable spirals, my mom said, "Chelsea, you've got to make a choice. You can either continue to believe what your feelings and emotions are telling you, that God's abandoned you, that you'll never get through this, and that there is no good left in life, that you'll never be happy again, which will just lead to a life of misery and destruction. Or despite what you feel, believe what God says is true, that he hasn't abandoned you, that he can work all things for good, and that you can get through this. But you have to make a choice." Through that, I learned that God never promised that life would be easy. But he did promise that he would be there every step of the way. And just because you feel something doesn't make it true. I felt like my life was over, that there was no hope, that I'd never be happy, healthy, successful again, that I'd be plagued with this misery and pain forever. Those were my genuine feelings. But was it true? No. I wouldn't be here if it was, and my horrible experiences do not define me today. The love and the grace of God do. You might feel like God and everyone else hates you, but is it true? No. He loves you outrageously enough to die for you whether you feel it or not, and there are people in your life who care immensely for you. Have you ever felt like a friend betrayed you, or they did something that really, really hurt? But then eventually, when you heard their side of the story, it was just a big misunderstanding, and they didn't actually have bad intentions at all. It felt like they did you dirty. But was it true? No. Do you know colorblind people literally feel and experience the world in black, brown, and white? But does that mean that everything is colorless? No. Sometimes our experiences make us feel and believe something, but it doesn't necessarily make it true. My dad's a surgeon, and all growing up, even now, honestly, anytime anyone in my family got injured, cut, had some type of wound that needed to be repaired, or maybe just something questionable on their body that needed to be cut off, he'd pull out his tackle box that was filled with medical supplies. He'd lay us on the kitchen table underneath the light so we could start to take care of the problem. Now, let me tell you, this is a physically painful process. He would use a scalpel exactly like this. I actually took this from him. And he would use it to cut the dead skin off, to get in deeper, to remove that growth, or he would poke me with needles, he'd sew me back together, and I would always yell at him and cry because it really freaking hurt. This is sharp. But then one time he stopped for a second to say, "It might be painful, but I'm not harming you. I'm helping you heal." It felt so painful. It did. But was he harming me? No. And just because we feel the pain doesn't mean we're being harmed. And just because you feel something doesn't make it true. That's why we need to choose to believe truth and not always trust our feelings. They can clearly be deceiving. Just ask your middle school self. I know sometimes in the moment it is really, really hard to tell the difference between truth and the lies we're believing and what our feelings are telling us. And so I would encourage you to take time and just sit with your feelings. Because it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to feel the pain. God gave us those feelings too, and sometimes pain is there to help us heal. It isn't harming us, even though it really hurts. Sometimes you have to go through the fire to be refined by it. Pain isn't a bad thing to feel, but don't just stay there and wallow in that. Learn to tell the difference between what is true and what just feels true. Ask yourself some fact-based questions in the moment that will help you lead to the truth. Try to see the situation from a different perspective, and you'll be able to start picking out fact versus feeling. But if you can't do this on your own, get help. Talk to somebody. It's okay. I couldn't do this on my own after my husband died. I needed a lot of help. And you know what? I still do. My mom's a counselor, and she helps me almost on a daily basis. But I also went to 2 other people for counseling and therapy for a really long time. We weren't created to do life alone, so don't try. It'll just make it harder. Get the help you need to navigate your situation. The reality is we all go through really hard and difficult situations. We all have pain. It might look different, but we're all going to experience it. One of my favorite verses that helped me through the worst times in my life is John 16:33, when Jesus said, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I've overcome the world." See, he promises us pain, but he also promises that he's bigger than whatever we're facing. The struggle is real, it's inevitable, but here are some hard truths. You may never know the reason behind the circumstances and suffering you experience. So don't waste your time and energy trying to come up with a theory as to why it happened. Does it even matter at the end of the day? You're still going through what you're going through. It doesn't change that. Job never got an answer as to why God allowed him to be targeted or why he had to lose everything he ever loved. But what he did get to know is God in a way he never would have if he didn't go through what he did. And I can say the same for myself. I don't know why I had to go through what I did, but I never would be the woman I am today or have the relationship with God that I do if I didn't go through the worst thing that I could imagine. God truly can use all things for good. That is the purpose of pain. So lean in, don't resist it or try to rationalize it. It's a waste of time. Sometimes crap just happens. Life is pain. We live in a sinful and fallen world where trouble is promised. But God is still good and bigger than all of it, even when your feelings tell you otherwise. Now look, there's a difference between reaping painful consequences of stupid choices and what's simply unfair and out of our control. So if you're going through a hard time because of something that you did was dumb, okay, well, learn from it, right? You're wrong. Stop doing whatever you're doing. Don't blame God or other people for it. That's on you. Learn the difference between a natural consequence and a painful circumstance that's totally out of your control will help you prevent what you can in the future and cope with it better today. So I don't know why you're going through this or why you'll have to experience the pain in the future, but I know the reason really doesn't matter either. Lean into Jesus in these moments. Allow the pain to propel you into a relationship with God that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And remember, just because you feel something, it doesn't make it true. It might hurt a lot, but it doesn't mean it's harming you. Let it help you heal. Stop trying to find a reason and start trying to find Jesus. And so now you're going to get to talk about it in your groups and dig in a little bit more. How are you feeling in all of this? Process it with your people and maybe open up about the pain that you've experienced or experiencing right now. If any of you haven't gone through anything crazy, how can you be a support to the people who are and help them navigate their feelings? I hope you have a great conversation. I'll see you again soon.